"Watch where you're going, old man." The words crashed through the spotless, echoing hallway of the base,
Oh my God.
louder than the rhythm of boots striking the polished linoleum. It wasn't a warning, it was an accusation. Corporal Miller, a young Marine whose tight haircut pushed his eyebrows into a permanent expression of superiority, stood with his chest thrust forward. He flicked invisible dust from the sleeve of his Marpat woodland uniform, the sharp digital pattern contrasting against the dull beige walls of the admin wing. Beside him, Lance Corporal Davis and Private First Class Ortiz snickered, hands half covering their mouths but making no real effort to hide their amusement. On the floor, a cane hit the ground and spun in a slow, wobbling circle before settling against the baseboard. Asterisk, asterisk. A folder lay burst open on the floor, its white sheets scattered across the gleaming waxed tiles like a flag of surrender. Jeffrey Warner stood over them, rocked slightly from the collision, but still upright. At 82, he carried himself like a man who had spent a lifetime bearing weight, both the visible kind and the kind no one could see. He wore a neatly pressed, short-sleeved royal blue shirt, worn thin at the collar, tucked into gray slacks above sturdy black orthopedic shoes. At first glance, he looked like a visitor who'd wandered off course on the way to the pharmacy, or maybe a grandfather searching for the base exchange to buy a birthday card. He didn't apologize. He didn't flinch. He simply looked at the young corporal. Jeffrey's eyes fell. Watery blue sat deep in a network of wrinkles carved by weather and time. He blinked slowly, glancing from Miller's aggressive stance to the papers strewn across the floor. "You hear me?" Miller barked, stepping forward and crowding into Jeffrey's space. The corporal stood tall and broad, riding the rush of morning PT and the reckless confidence of being 22 in a uniform that demanded respect. I said, "Watch it. This is an active corridor, not a nursing home promenade." Behind him, Davis let out a sharp laugh. "He probably forgot where he is," he jeered. "Probably looking for the chow hall to get some mush." Jeffrey bent down with slow, deliberate movement. His knees creaked, joints popping softly as he reached for the nearest sheet. It was an ordinary form, nothing important, but his hand paused above it. His knuckles were swollen, the skin thin like parchment. "I'm gathering my things," he said. His voice was gravelly and low, like tires crunching over crushed stone. Not loud, but unmistakably steady. Miller rolled his eyes and kicked the old man's cane, sending it skidding another 3 feet down the hall. "Then move faster. You're blocking traffic." There was no traffic. The hallway was empty, except for the 3 Marines and the elderly man in blue. The urgency was fabricated, just cruelty born of boredom and a need to feel superior. Jeffrey straightened again, abandoning the paper. His gaze followed the cane, then returned to Miller. The air shifted, something subtle, but unmistakable. The stillness around him wasn't fear. It was the quiet tension of a predator waiting for the right moment. "You kicked my cane," Jeffrey said. "I moved a tripping hazard," Miller replied with a smug grin, folding his arms across his chest. Under the fluorescent lights, the Marpat pattern seemed to vibrate. "You need clearance to be in this wing. Civilians stick to the visitor center." "I have an appointment," Jeffrey said softly. "An appointment?" Miller mocked. "With who?" "The janitor," Ortiz snorted. "Looking for a job? Mopping floors? You look like you couldn't even lift the bucket." "Maybe he's somebody's grandpa," Davis joked. "If he is, they should keep him on a leash," Miller snapped, stepping closer until he loomed over Jeffrey. "Show me ID before I call the MPs and have them haul you out for trespassing." Jeffrey didn't reach for a wallet. He didn't move at all. His hands hung loosely at his sides. The bright blue of his shirt stood out boldly against the dull surroundings. But none of the Marines noticed the tiny pin on his collar-black enamel with a gold rim. It caught a glint of light, then vanished. For a moment, Jeffrey's mind drifted. The hallway dissolved. The waxed floors became jungle mud. The sterile air filled with the metallic smell of blood and the smoke of burning cordite. Mortar screamed overhead. The radio handset weighed heavy in his hand. He remembered boys younger than Miller boys who didn't smirk. Boys who died clutching photographs of their mothers. The memory lasted less than a heartbeat, but it steadied him. True strength didn't need to raise its voice. I asked for ID, Miller snapped, waving a hand in his face. I don't think you want to do that, son, Jeffrey said. The gravel remained in his voice, but steel had joined it. The word son detonated something inside Miller. His face reddened. I'm a corporal in the United States Marine Corps. You're a confused civilian in a restricted area. I'm not your son. Now get against the wall, hands where I can see them. At the far end of the hallway, a door opened. An Army specialist stepped out holding a tray of coffees. She froze. She saw the Marines towering over the old man, the cane on the floor, the papers scattered everywhere. Then her eyes landed on Jeffrey's face. She stared, squinted, went pale. She'd spent 6 months digitizing historical records Vietnam. Classified operations, the kind of missions whispered about. She knew faces. She knew citations. The man before her? She had seen him before. In the museum, in the restricted wing. In the photograph, no one touched. The tray clattered from her hands, cups bursting and coffee splashing across the floor. The explosive crash snapped everyone's attention. What is wrong with everyone today? Miller shouted. Is it Incompetence Day? But the specialist didn't apologize. She didn't look at the mess. She was backing away, fumbling for the secure phone at her belt. Pick up, she whispered, dialing a number not found in any directory. Miller turned back just as the frustration boiled over. Great, now, look what you caused, he snapped at Jeffrey. You're a distraction. A liability. He grabbed Jeffrey's arm, fingers biting into the fabric. That's it. We're going to the guard shack. Jeffrey looked at the hand gripping him. No struggle, no fear. Only quiet authority. Unhand me, he said. A command? Soft but absolute? Or what? Miller sneered. You going to hit me with your cane? Oh, wait, you can't reach it. It's 3 floors above, inside a secure conference room. 3 generals sat around a heavy oak table. They were deep into budgeting discussions when the red phone on the side table buzzed a sharp, urgent vibration reserved only for immediate priorities. General Vance lifted the receiver. Vance. He listened for 3 seconds. His posture snapped upright. His eyes widened. Repeat that. Another pause. And you're sure? He slammed the phone down. The room went silent. Vance. General Sterling rose halfway. What happened? Warner is in the building, Vance said, already striding toward the door. General Holloway gasped. Jeffrey Warner. The Warner. He's in hallway C, and according to the archivist, 3 Marines are currently harassing him. Chairs toppled. Ranks forgotten. Protocol gone. The generals moved as soldiers, driven by urgent fear, locked down the admin wing. Vance barked as he rushed past his aide. Nobody in or out. MPs, stand down. Clear me a path. Back in the hallway, things had worsened. Miller twisted Jeffrey's arm behind his back, forcing him to bend. Jeffrey inhaled sharply through clenched teeth, old wounds flaring. But he didn't cry out. You're resisting, Miller announced loudly. Inventing a narrative. I am not resisting, Jeffrey said tightly. Let him go, Miller. He's old, Ortiz muttered, increasingly uneasy. Shut up, Miller snapped. He refused to ID. He's trespassing. Shoved Jeffrey forward. The old man stumbled. His weak knee buckled. Bringing him down onto one knee in the spreading pool of coffee, Miller laughed once short and triumphant. Look at that. Can't even stand. That is enough. The voice didn't come from the hallway. The sound came from the stairwell door at the far end of the corridor. It burst open with such force that the plaster wall dented. Miller turned, irritated. I told you, this is a restrict. The rest of his sentence died instantly. It wasn't an MP. It wasn't a janitor. It was a wall of olive and taupe uniforms. General Vance led the charge, his face twisted in a fury so sharp it looked painful. Right behind him were General Sterling and General Holloway, 3 stars, 2 stars. 2 stars, 7 stars in total, advancing with the momentum of a freight train. A dozen armed soldiers flooded in behind them, weapons held at the low ready, but their eyes weren't on the generals. They were locked on the Marines. Miller instantly dropped Jeffrey's arm, as if he'd touched a live wire. His mind refused to accept what he was seeing. Generals didn't run. Generals didn't come to hallway C, and generals certainly didn't look like they were. Away from committing murder? Attention, Davis squeaked, voice cracking. He snapped to attention so sharply his heels clapped like a gunshot. Ortiz followed, shaking. Miller tried to do the same, but his legs refused to move. He stood frozen, watching the storm bear down on him. General Vance stopped, only 6 inches from Miller's face. He wasn't out of breath from running, he was shaking with rage. He didn't even glance at Miller at first. Instead, he dropped to his knees beside Jeffrey Warner. He didn't care about the spilled coffee. He didn't care about the pristine crease in his service green trousers. He knelt in the brown puddle without hesitation. "Sir," Vance said, voice trembling with an emotion Miller couldn't place something like reverence. His hands hovered gently near Jeffrey. "Sir, are you hurt? Did they injure you?" Jeffrey adjusted his glasses, peering at Vance. A faint, weary smile appeared. "Hello, Robert," he said softly. "I see you finally earned that 3rd star." Miller felt dizzy. Robert he had called a lieutenant general. Robert, Sterling, and Holloway crowded in beside Vance. Sterling, normally icy and unreadably, looked stunned. He bent down, picked up Jeffrey's cane from where Miller had knocked it aside, wiped it clean with the sleeve of his own general's uniform, and offered it with both hands, head bowed. "Your cane," Sergeant Major Sterling whispered. The title hung in the air. A sergeant major was enlisted and still. The generals were kneeling to him. Jeffrey took the cane and pushed himself upright. Vance and Holloway instantly grabbed his elbows, helping him to his feet as though he were made of glass, or something far more precious. Once Jeffrey stood, Vance rose too. He turned toward Miller. The transformation from gentle concern to glacial fury was instant, Corporal Vance said. "The word dripping like poison, sir." Miller whispered. "Do you know who this man is?" Vance asked quietly. "No, sir. He had no ID. He was loitering." "Loitering," Vance repeated, stepping closer. "This man is Command Sergeant Major Jeffrey Warner." The name hit Miller like a foreign language he should have known but never studied. "You don't recognize the name?" Vance said coldly. "That's a failure of your leadership and your education. Let me fix that." He pointed to Jeffrey's blue shirt. "This man held the perimeter at Firebase. It's Delta for 3 days alone after his entire platoon was incapacitated. He is a Medal of Honor recipient. He has 3 silver stars, 2 Purple Hearts. He founded the reconnaissance school you Marines brag about. He wrote the jungle survival manual you carried through boot camp." General Holloway stepped forward. "He isn't just a veteran, Corporal. He is the veteran. Half the tactics you use exist because of him. General Vance, General Sterling, and I are alive because of him. He trained us. He led us." Miller felt his stomach drop. He had shoved a Medal of Honor recipient, mocked the man who wrote the manual he had studied, kicked the cane of the man who trained 3 generals, and you, Vance said. Leaning so close, Miller felt his breath. "You struck him. You laughed at him. You kicked his cane." I didn't know." Miller stuttered, eyes burning. "He was just wearing a blue shirt." "I thought you thought he was weak," Jeffrey said quietly. Every general fell silent. Jeffrey stepped forward, cane tapping. His limp was more noticeable now. "You thought I was weak because I'm old," he said softly. "Because I wasn't in uniform. You judged a cover worn down by time." He tapped the Marpat pattern on Miller's chest. "This uniform is not permission to be a bully. It is a burden, a promise. You serve all people, the confused old men, the grandfathers, the janitors. When you put this on, you surrender arrogance. You accept humility." He swept his eyes across all 3 Marines. They stared at their boots. "I came today," Jeffrey continued, "because General Vance invited me to speak to the new officer candidates about leadership and character." He looked back at Miller. "Seems I found my first case study." Vance stepped forward again. "MPs. 2 military police appeared immediately. Take them into custody. Charge them with conduct unbecoming, assault, and disrespect to a superior commissioned officer. Sir, Miller cried. Vance smiled a cold, predatory smile. Oh, I forgot to mention. Upon his retirement 20 years ago, Sergeant Major Warner was brevetted to the honorary rank of Brigadier General by the President of the United States. Miller crumpled as the MPs grabbed him. You just assaulted a general officer. Son, Vance said. The hallway fell silent as the disgraced Marines were dragged away. Vance turned back to Jeffrey and gently brushed dust off his blue shirt. I'm so sorry, Jeffrey, he said thickly. I should have sent an escort. It's all right, Robert, Jeffrey replied. It was educational. Besides, I haven't seen you move that fast since the Tet Offensive. A strained laugh escaped Vance. He turned to the crowd. Attention to orders. 50 people snapped to attention. Present arms. 50 salutes rose in perfect unison or raw, wordless salute of reverence. Jeffrey stood among them in his stained blue shirt and gray slacks, cane in hand. Slowly, with a trembling arm, he returned the salute. For a heartbeat, he wasn't in a hallway, but on a muddy landing zone. Watching a medevac helicopter lift off, staying behind to hold the line, then the memory faded. At ease, he murmured. Vance offered his arm. Come on, sir. Let's get you a fresh coffee. Maybe a dry pair of pants? I've got extra greens in my office, though they might swallow you whole. Jeffrey chuckled. I'll keep the blue shirt. Keeps me humble. The three generals flanked him as they walked. Soldiers pressed themselves against the walls, watching the living legend limp past before they rounded the corner. Jeffrey paused and looked back at the coffee stain. Don't be too hard on the boy. Robert, he said softly. He assaulted you, Vance said, incredulous. He's young. He's foolish. He has power and no wisdom. Send him to the Brigshire. Strip his rank. But don't throw him out. Send him to me. To you. To my farm, Jeffrey said. Let him paint fences and hear some stories. Let him learn what the uniform costs. If he can last a month with me, then maybe he's worthy of wearing Marpat again. Vance shook his head, smiling. You're a better man than I am. Not better, Jeffrey said as the elevator doors opened. Just older. And sometimes the best way to win a fight is to turn an enemy into a believer. The doors closed behind them. The story of the man in the blue shirt spread across the base like wildfire the day the generals ran. The day the base went silent. The day a bully learned that true valor needs no uniform. A month later, on a small farm outside the base, a former corporal named Miller stood in jeans and a t-shirt, painting a white picket fence. He looked exhausted. Humbled, on the porch sat Jeffrey Warner, rocking gently, sipping iced tea. Wearing the same blue shirt? You missed a spot, Jeffrey called. Eyes twinkling. Miller wiped his brow and nodded with deep respect. Yes, Sergeant Major. He dipped his brush and kept painting, grateful for the lesson, grateful for the second chance, finally understanding what it meant to serve something bigger than himself.